They said no one survives the pit of no return, that the white wolves tear flesh from bone before a condemned soul can draw a second breath. They never told me the wolves had been waiting for me my entire life. Traitor, King Roderick Ashford called me, his voice echoing through the sweltering throne room like thunder across a summer sky. The heat was unbearable that day, the kind of heat that makes stone walls sweat and turns silk gowns into instruments of torture. I stood before him in chains, my cropped black hair still damp from the prison's humidity, and I watched his sunken eyes search my face for fear. He found none. 20 years of dreams had prepared me for this moment, though I never understood why until the guards dragged me toward the iron gates of the abyss. The summer sun blazed mercilessly overhead as they led me through the castle grounds. Cicadas screamed from every tree, their endless drone a fitting accompaniment to my march toward death. Courtiers fanned themselves beneath silk canopies, their faces gleaming with sweat and morbid curiosity. I had once walked among them as the royal falconer, my bird soaring above these same towers, my future bright as the golden light that now scorched my shoulders through the thin prisoner's shift. That was before the Queen died, before Roderick lost his mind to grief and transformed every shadow into conspiracy, every loyal servant into a potential assassin. I remember the day everything changed with a clarity that time has not dimmed. I was 23, releasing my favorite gyrfalcon into the morning air, watching her wings catch the thermal currents above the castle walls, when the Queen collapsed in her garden. The physicians could not save her. No one could. And in his anguish, Roderick began to see enemies everywhere. The royal physician was executed first, dragged from his chambers at midnight. Then the Queen's handmaidens, all 7 of them. Then anyone who had ever been near her in those final weeks. I lasted 5 more years only because I kept to the muse, speaking more to hawks than humans, finding solace in the simple honesty of predator birds who killed only to survive. Until one of my falcons landed on the shoulder of a visiting dignitary, the king suspected of plotting against him. Such a small thing. Such a fatal coincidence. The gates of the pit groaned open, and the stench hit me like a physical blow. Rot and copper and something older, something primal that reached into my chest and squeezed with cold fingers. The heat vanished at the threshold, replaced by a chill that seemed to emanate from the very stones. Warden Thessa Brine stood at the entrance, her red braids coiled atop her head, her left hand missing 2 fingers that I knew the wolves had taken. She had watched dozens descend these stairs over her decade of service. None had ever climbed back up. "Wait," she said, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her weathered face. Not pity. Recognition, perhaps, as if she sensed what I had not yet admitted to myself. The wolves will be hungry. It has been 3 days since the last prisoner. I met her gaze and felt the scar on my chin tighten as I smiled. Then they will finally have what they have been waiting for. She did not understand. How could she? She had not spent 20 years dreaming of amber eyes in the darkness, of white fur beneath her palms, of a voice without words that whispered her true name across the boundary between waking and sleeping. The dreams began when I was 8 years old, feverish and dying from a sickness that should have claimed me. My father sat beside my bed for 3 days, pressing cool cloths to my forehead. In the depths of that fever, I wandered through a forest that did not exist, lost and terrified, and so very cold despite the fire raging through my blood. And a wolf, the color of moonlight, found me shivering beneath an ancient oak, his amber eyes holding an intelligence that transcended anything I had ever seen. He pressed his massive head against my chest, and I felt warmth flood through my veins like summer itself. And I woke the next morning with the fever broken and a certainty lodged in my heart that I could never explain. The stairs spiraled downward into darkness. The summer heat faded with each step, replaced by a damp coolness that smelled of stone and old blood. I counted 37 steps before the torchlight died completely, and I was left with only the sound of my own breathing and the distant drip of water somewhere far below. My hands trembled against the rough walls, but not from fear, from anticipation, from the overwhelming sense that I was finally, after all these years of waiting and dreaming, coming home. The bottom of the pit opened into a cavern vast enough to swallow the throne room twice over. Faint light filtered through cracks in the stone ceiling far above, casting pale shafts that illuminated scattered bones and rusted chains. The remains of those who came before me, prisoners and innocents whose only crime was existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. I stepped over a skull half buried in dust, its empty sockets staring up at the distant light it would never reach, and felt the hair rise on my arms. They emerged from the shadows like ghosts given form, like fragments of my dreams made suddenly, impossibly real. 15 wolves, their white pelts luminous even in the dim light, their eyes fixed upon me with an intelligence that transcended animal instinct. They were enormous, each one standing nearly as tall as my waist, their muscles coiled beneath scarred hides that spoke of lives lived in violence. Killers, every one of them. Demons of the pit, Roderick called them. His favorite method of execution because it required no headsman, no public spectacle, just screams echoing up from the darkness, and then silence. The largest wolf stepped forward, and my breath caught in my throat. Half his left ear was missing, torn away in some ancient battle whose story I would never know. His muzzle bore a web of scars that spoke of countless fights survived. But his eyes, his amber eyes burning like twin suns in the darkness, were exactly as I remembered from 1,000 dreams. Grimjaw. I did not speak the name aloud. I did not need to. It rose from somewhere deep in my chest and traveled the distance between us like a bridge made of memory and moonlight. He stopped 3 paces away and lifted his great head, nostrils flaring as he drew in my scent. The other wolves held perfectly still, watching, waiting. I understood then that this was a test, though not the kind Roderick intended. The king had sent me here to die. The wolves were deciding if I deserved to live. I sank to my knees, not in supplication, but in greeting. In the dreams, this was always how we met. Me kneeling in the dark forest, him approaching with cautious grace, our souls recognizing each other across whatever strange divide separated waking from sleeping. I had never understood those visions. I had dismissed them as fever-born fantasies, remnants of the sickness that nearly killed me as a child. But now, breathing the same air as this magnificent creature, I understood that they were memories of a bond forged before I was born, waiting for the moment when fate would finally bring us together in flesh as we had already met in spirit. Grimjaw closed the remaining distance between us. His breath was warm against my face, carrying the scent of wild things and open sky. I held perfectly still as he pressed his scarred muzzle against my forehead, and something inside me broke open like a dam releasing waters held too long in check. Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot against my cold skin. Not from sorrow, but from a joy so profound it bordered on grief. I had been alone my entire life, even in crowds. I had never belonged anywhere, to anyone. And now, in the depths of a pit designed for death, I finally found the family I had always been searching for. One by one, the other wolves approached. They circled me slowly, sniffing my hair, my hands, the thin fabric of my shift. I felt their breath like whispered secrets against my skin, each exhale carrying information I could not consciously interpret, but somehow understood. When the last of them had completed the ritual, something shifted in the pack. Attention released, and acceptance confirmed. And then, impossibly, they began to settle around me like dogs before a hearth, their massive bodies pressing against mine, their warmth seeping into my bones. I laughed. The sound echoed through the cavern, strange and wild and free, startling me with its unfamiliarity. When had I last laughed like that? I buried my face in Grimjaw's thick fur, and let 20 years of loneliness pour out of me in great heaving sobs that eventually softened into something like peace. Time passed differently in the pit. Without the sun to mark the hours, I measured the days by the rhythm of the pack. We slept in a tangle of fur and limbs. The wolves curled around me like a living blanket that breathed and dreamed alongside me. We hunted the blind fish that swam in the underground streams, pale creatures that had never seen light, and the rats that scurried through the deeper tunnels. Grimjaw taught me how to move in darkness, how to read the air currents that carried scent and sound from distant chambers. I learned the language of his pack, the subtle shifts in posture and the soft vocalizations that communicated more than human words ever could. A flattened ear meant caution. A raised tail meant confidence. A particular rumble in the chest meant affection, and I heard that sound often when the wolves pressed against me in the dark. But the past was never far from my thoughts. I dreamed of my mother, dead when I was 4. Her face a blur I could no longer properly recall. I dreamed of my father, a gamekeeper who taught me everything about animals before a boar took him when I was 12, leaving me orphaned and alone in a world that had no place for a girl with no family and no fortune. I dreamed of the day I entered the castle as an apprentice falconer, my heart swelling with pride and hope, unaware that I was walking into a gilded cage. And I dreamed of Roderick, young and handsome and kind, before grief twisted him into something monstrous. He had loved his queen with a devotion that bordered on obsession. When she died, that love curdled into madness, and the kingdom paid the price. On what I guessed was the 5th day, the sound of footsteps echoed down the spiral stairs. I lifted my head from Grimjaw's flank, my muscles tensing with an alertness that felt more wolf than human. The pack rose around me, their hackles lifting, their lips peeling back to reveal teeth like ivory daggers. But I placed my hand on Grimjaw's shoulder, feeling the coiled power beneath his fur, and he stilled beneath my touch, though a low growl continued to rumble in his chest. Warden Thessa Brine emerged from the darkness, a torch in her 3-fingered hand and disbelief etched across her weathered face. She stopped at the edge of the light, staring at me surrounded by wolves who should have killed me in seconds, and I watched the color drain from her cheeks. "How?" she whispered. "How is this possible?" I did not answer. There was no answer that would make sense to someone who had not lived inside my dreams, who had not spent 20 years wondering if she was mad or blessed or something in between. Instead, I rose to my feet, and the wolves rose with me, and I saw in Thessa's eyes a fear that had nothing to do with the beasts. She was afraid of what I represented, a woman who should be dead, standing alive among monsters. A miracle or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. She ran. I heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs, heard her voice shouting for the guards, heard the distant clamor of alarms spreading through the castle above. I knew what would come next. Roderick would not accept this. He would need to see for himself, to confirm that his instrument of execution had failed, to understand how a woman he had discarded like refuse had survived his ultimate punishment. And when he descended into the pit, he would find something far more terrifying than wolves. He would find me. The king arrived with a retinue of guards, their torches casting dancing shadows across the cavern walls. I stood in the center of the pit, Grimjaw on my right, a silver female named Moonwhisper on my left, the rest of the pack arrayed behind me like a living throne. Roderick stopped at the base of the stairs, his face pale beneath his unkempt beard, his sunken eyes wide with a shock that bordered on horror. "This is not possible," he said, his voice cracking. "The wolves killed everyone. Everyone. They were supposed to kill you." I tilted my head, studying the man who had once been a just ruler, a loving husband, a king worthy of the title. Grief had hollowed him out and filled the empty spaces with paranoia and cruelty. I should have hated him for what he did to me, for what he did to dozens of innocent people executed on suspicion alone. But standing there, surrounded by my pack, I felt only a vast and weary pity. They were never your wolves, I said. They were never anyone's wolves. They were waiting for someone who could hear them, for someone who understood. Roderick's hand went to his sword, but his guards held back, their faces betraying a terror the king was too proud to show. They had heard the stories. They knew what these wolves could do. And now they were watching those same wolves sit calmly at my feet, their amber eyes fixed upon the intruders with an intelligence that made hardened soldiers tremble. "Kill her," Roderick commanded, but no one moved. "Kill her!" he screamed, and still his men stood frozen, their torches shaking, their courage dissolving in the face of the impossible. I could have ordered the pack to attack. One word, one gesture, and 15 wolves would have torn through those guards like wind through wheat. They would have reached Roderick before he could draw his blade, and the king who sent me here to die would have met the same fate he prescribed for so many others. The thought flickered through my mind like lightning, bright and tempting and terrible. But vengeance would not bring back the dead. It would not heal the kingdom bleeding under Roderick's mad reign. It would only add more blood to hands already stained with loss. I had not come to the pit to become a killer. I had come to become something else. Something I did not yet fully understand, but could feel growing inside me like a seed finally given water. "There is another way out," I said quietly. The wolves showed me. Tunnels that lead beyond the castle walls, beyond the kingdom itself. I am leaving, Roderick. I am taking the pack with me, and you will never see us again. The king's face contorted with fury. "You cannot simply walk away. You are a traitor, a criminal. You belong to me." I smiled, and I saw him flinch at whatever he glimpsed in my eyes. I never belonged to anyone. That was my crime, was it not? That I could not be controlled. That I would not bow and scrape and pretend that your madness was wisdom. You did not send me here because I was a traitor. You sent me here because you could not break me. And now you never will. I turned my back on the King of Ashford. It was the most dangerous thing I had ever done. More dangerous than facing the wolves. More dangerous than 5 years of navigating a court poisoned by paranoia. I heard him scream for his guards to seize me. I heard the clatter of armored boots against stone. And then I heard Grimjaw's roar, a sound like thunder given voice, and the footsteps stopped. When I glanced over my shoulder, I saw the wolves arrayed in a defensive line, their bodies blocking the path between me and the soldiers. Roderick stood behind his men, his face twisted with impotent rage, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He could send an army into the pit. He could collapse the tunnels with fire and powder. He could burn the entire kingdom to ash trying to destroy me. But he would never catch me now. The darkness was my ally. The wolves were my family. And the tunnels beneath his castle led to a freedom he could not even imagine. I walked into the shadows without looking back. The tunnels wound through the earth for miles, climbing gradually toward the surface. Grimjaw led the way, his white fur luminous even in the absolute dark, his scarred body navigating passages too narrow for any human army to follow. The other wolves flanked me, their warmth a constant comfort, their presence a reminder that I would never be alone again. We traveled through the night and into the next day, pausing only to drink from underground streams and rest in chambers carved by ancient water. When we finally emerged, the summer sun was setting behind distant hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber and rose. I stood at the mouth of the tunnel, breathing air that tasted of grass and wildflowers and freedom, and I felt tears streaming down my cheeks for the second time since entering the pit. But these were not tears of reunion. These were tears of farewell. I was leaving behind everything I had ever known. My home, my history, the person I had been before the wolves claimed me. Grimjaw pressed his head against my hip, and I sank my fingers into his thick fur. The pack gathered around us, their eyes reflecting the dying light, their bodies casting long shadows across the golden grass. 15 wolves and 1 woman standing on the threshold of a new world. Behind us lay a kingdom ruled by madness and fear. Before us lay endless hills rolling toward a horizon I had never seen. I thought of Warden Thessa Brine, watching me from the edge of the torchlight, her face slack with wonder. I thought of the guards who refused to attack, their courage finally finding its proper form. I thought of Roderick, screaming into the darkness as his prisoner walked away. Perhaps my escape would plant seeds of doubt in the minds of those who served him. Perhaps it would remind them that even kings can be wrong. Perhaps it would change nothing at all. I would never know. That story belonged to them now. Mine was just beginning. We walked into the sunset, the wolves and I. Grimjaw ranged ahead, scouting the path, while Moonwhisper stayed close to my side, her silver fur brushing against my hand with every step. The other wolves spread out around us, a living constellation moving across the darkening land. I did not know where we were going. I did not know what we would find. But for the first time in my life, the uncertainty felt like freedom instead of fear. The last light faded from the sky, and the stars emerged one by one, ancient and indifferent and beautiful. I tipped my head back and let their silver glow wash over my face, and I felt Grimjaw's presence beside me like a promise kept after 20 years of waiting. The dreams had led me here. The fever that should have killed me as a child had instead opened a door between my soul and his. And now, finally, we were walking through that door together. Somewhere behind us, King Roderick Ashford stood on his castle walls, staring into the darkness that had swallowed his prisoner and his wolves. I wondered if he understood yet what he had lost. Not a traitor, not a criminal, but the one person in his kingdom who might have shown him that grief does not have to become madness, that loss does not have to become cruelty, that even the deepest wounds can heal if you let them. He had thrown that chance into the pit of no return, and it had walked out the other side, transformed into something he could never control. The summer night wrapped around us like a blessing. The wolves sang to the moon, their voices rising in a chorus that echoed across the empty hills, and I added my own voice to theirs, wordless and wild and free. We were pack now. We were family. And whatever waited for us beyond the horizon, we would face it together. I never looked back. There was nothing left for me in that direction except memories and chains. But ahead, where the stars met the edge of the world, I could see the faint outline of mountains rising against the darkness. New territory, new possibilities. A life I had never dared to imagine, waiting for me to claim it. Grimjaw howled once more, a sound of triumph and belonging that shivered through my bones, and I ran with him into the night, my bare feet flying across the summer grass, my heart beating in rhythm with the pack. The girl who entered the pit of no return was gone. In her place ran something new, something ancient, something that had been waiting inside me since the fever dreams of childhood, finally awakened, finally whole. I am Seraphina Voss. I am the Wolf Walker, and my story is only beginning.